Hello and welcome to part 10 of the Scratch introduction tutorial. In this video I'm going to be covering getting basic movement and pathing with enemy sprites. So in particular we're going to be covering using the bats and getting them moving on little patrol paths throughout this level. So this is actually a pretty easy and pretty simple system in Scratch. The important thing to do is there's a couple little tips and tricks I'm going to share with you involving making sure that the stop button's pressed on our game in order that we have fully refreshed and updated XY coordinates for each of these sprites. So let's start on our first bat. If you just double click on the bat, you'll notice that he shows up with a little blue highlight that fades out on the screen. It's a useful little trick for if you're trying to locate which sprite, if you got three sprites that all look the same. So if you just click on it, see there's a little highlight that appeared on this guy. So we know it's this dude right here. Obviously, if we're looking at the bat itself, you can see here in the code area that his brain, or his little code brain, is empty. There's no current code associated with them. We have code in Scratch, which is associated with touching the bat and doing the respawn and lives variable, but the bat itself currently has no code. So let's start. We start like we always do with an event block. So clicking on the events, we're going to grab the when green flag clicked, or basically when the program starts. With this block, I'm going to actually do something a little bit different just because I know what's coming down the pipe. But anytime you're working with something that has the potential to either move into a different area or maybe respawn or disappear, I always like to make sure that I do have a show block right at the start with almost all my sprites, because you always end up having to go back and add it later when you're adding other sort of code around moving or destroying objects. So I'm going to drop that show code in there just to start. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my stop button here is pressed on my game, because that makes sure that when I go to my motion blocks, which I'm going to do next, all these coordinates are updated to the current XY coordinates of the sprite. So here's the bat. Its current X coordinate is -16. Its current Y coordinate is 31. And you'll notice that that's matched to all the possible areas here where it could be. I'm going to start with a go to XY coordinate block because this is an absolute block, which means go to this exact position instantly. And it's a good way to always start off with your sprites, giving them a starting sort of origin point so they don't have to move from wherever they're currently at. Kind of just resets the level every time you start up the game. Then I'm going to move on to control, grab a forever block because we want to create a looping behavior. Actually, we're not going to do a forever block. We remember we had levels here, so we are going to do something a little bit better. We're going to do a repeat until block. So that's a little bit further down. It's like a forever block, but it's basically a repeat until a condition is met. So repeat until something's true, and then you'll notice that it has this little tag here at the bottom, then you'll move on to the next block below it. So we're going to repeat until, let me just zoom in here to make this nice and big. We're going to basically set our level 1 pathing. So this is, we touched on operators a little bit earlier, but we're going to build a little operator in here around the level itself. So you can see that we have the level variable. Currently the level is level 1. So we're going to go to operators, and we're going to use a greater than. So we're going to grab this greater than. I'm going to drag it here, and we're going to use greater than 1. This is really useful because they will then apply to everything above level 1. So if we go to our variables and we grab our level, this little bit of code in here is going to repeat until the level is greater than 1, which means that during level 1, this code will work. Then it will stop once the level is greater than 1. So I've got my bat here. I'm going to get him on a basic little patrol path. What am I going to do? I'm going to move him along. The important thing to remember when you begin this is the idea basically of points along the path. The bats can only really easily move in straight lines. There are ways to do curves that requires a little bit more complex math. So we're going to have our bat, and we're going to move him we're going to give him a basic sort of square patrol. So we're going to move him right here, and this is going to be the next sort of point in his path. We're going to go motion. We're going to go glide 1 second to coordinates, right? And because it's automatically updating, because this is pressed on stop, I'm going to drop this in. He's going to glide 1 second there. Then he's going to glide up here, and we're going to drop in that next point inside here. He's going to glide here, and glide 1 second there. And then he's going to move down to his 4th point. Now at this point in time, he will then loop up and glide 1 second back to that original glide point. So let's take a look at this and see how it works. You can see he's now gliding over 1 second. So there's basically a 1 second time elapse between each of these points as he moves between them. If we change these to 2, you notice that he slows down. So it takes 2 seconds to move between each of the points. And obviously 0.5. Moving a little bit faster. What would be kind of cool is to change this one to 0.5, this one to 2, and this one to 2. And now we have a sort of slow fast, a little bit more of an interesting pattern. If we want it to be really, really crazy, and this is just, you don't have to do this, this is just like a little brain exercise, but what I could do is I could right click here, I could duplicate, and duplicate this whole section right here, so the same things, drop it down here, and then this time, change it to, you don't have to do this by the way, 0.5 to 0.5. And now we've got a really weird sort of like offset pattern where it basically creates a little bit of a tougher pattern to recognize as far as how it's going to move, and you can't remember which one it's going to do. So that's a silly example, but you could do that. I'm just going to drag this off and delete it because we don't want to make this thing too complex. Let's select our next bat, and we're going to basically duplicate most of this. I'm going to hit stop, go to events, flag clicked, make sure we drop our little show in there, and then go to motion, go to set that sort of starting position. I'm actually going to start this guy right here. Yeah, I'm going to start him right here. And then we're going to go to control, repeat until, and we're going to repeat until, same as before, level. So that's in variables is where we find our level. Remember, you can't just type level in there. You actually have to grab the level variable is greater than 1. And then I'm going to move him to the next point. Motion, glide 1 second, glide 1 second, glide 1 second. And for this guy, I'm going to have him go all the way to the end point right here. And then I'm going to have him come back. So I do actually have to program in that reversal. I can't just have him loop at that point, because otherwise what happens is he'll just go in a straight line from this point back to that original point, which is not what we want. And here. It's a little bit of a longer one. And here. Okay. Give that a little test. Looks like everything's working. Let's do this last bat. This one's going to just be a simple one. He's going to start right here, and he's going to be basically a back and forth patrol. So So events, start, stop this thing, all looks, show, motion, go to the starting position, and then once again a repeat until the level is greater than 1. And then variables, once again, the level. You'll notice how the code just repeats over and over again. That's pretty common in any kind of game programming. I'm going to move on to the next point in this path. Glide 1 second there. And this guy's just going to go glide back to the original position. This one will only be a 2 block glide. Let's take a look at how that looks. There we go. Added a nice little bit of complexity to our game. This is now a little bit more challenging to play, right? Don't know. Actually think a little bit about things. See, it died right there. Coming through here. I don't actually know if I could get past this guy in the time. Oh, I can. Just barely. And grab that last one. And then you'll notice as we hit level 2, they all stop, right? Because now the level is greater than 2, and this code stops running, and we'll have to move on, and we'll basically create our code in the next video for level 2 pathing for our minions.